This has been a hard week. Bob and I were just lamenting about the flooding on Tuesday night and the trouble getting around in our cars. But then Thursday happened, and that was my day off, and I ended up sitting in front of the TV and just watching the entire hearing, basically from beginning to end of Brett Kavanaugh. And the testimony of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford saying that Judge Kavanaugh had sexually assaulted her when they were both teenagers. So I think this has been a hard week for many women. It's been a hard week for people of all genders who have been sexually assaulted or abused. It has, I would like to think that it has been a hard week for all of us as we reevaluate toxic masculinity, and especially when it's combined with privilege and substance abuse. There's been a lot to process with all of that, and it's been hard for me, And on top of all of that, I started off this week doing something that I hope none of you had to do. Last Saturday, I spent the early morning reading through legislation for the 2019 gathering of Global United Methodists called the General Conference. There's a lot to say about that gathering, but the main thing for you to know today is that the United Methodist denomination discriminates against people based on sexual orientation. You didn't know that. Although churches like ours are in active and open rebellion against those policies. But this coming February, the denomination will be holding a special gathering in St. Louis, Missouri, for the sole purpose of deciding whether and how we will discriminate against LGBTQ people. And I will be taking part in that gathering, and so I have to read all of this stuff that we'll be discussing. And there are all these plans out there. Some groups have submitted these plans that range all the way from removing all of the discriminatory laws, that's a plan I support, all the way to just completely dissolving the denomination totally. And we'll be talking about all of this. Don't be too anxious about it. But last Saturday morning, I just found myself in a Starbucks outside Baltimore, getting ready for one of these General Conference related meetings, and I sat there with my latte at 7:30 a.m. doing a close reading of this one plan that is being brought to General Conference 2019. It's actually quite a popular plan known as the traditional plan. And the traditional plan would make our church into a denomination that is, like its authors, strangely obsessed with sexual orientation. This plan would require every bishop and every annual conference, which is our regional body, to certify officially that they will enforce our rules that discriminate against LGBTQ people. They wouldn't have us certify that we would enforce any of the other rules that we have in our big book of discipline, just the LGBTQ discrimination rules. And it would create these mandatory minimum sentences for clergy like me, who for reasons of conscience cannot follow those discriminatory rules. So mandatory minimum punishments have never existed in our church before for clergy doing anything. Not abuse, not having an affair with a choir member, not for stealing all the church's money, no mandatory minimum sentences for those. But under this plan, if clergy perform a same-sex wedding or identify as LGBTQ, they would automatically be suspended without pay for the first conviction for a whole year. And for the second conviction, would lose automatically their clergy credentials. So it is a very punitive plan that is obviously very much designed to get those of us who cannot live with the discriminatory rules out of the church. So a few days later, then I was reading the gospel passage assigned to this week, and I felt just so deflated. Here we have Jesus saying, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. And I just felt like to the people who support this traditional plan, I am the hand that they want to cut off. My queer friends are the feet that they want to cut off. And churches like First and Summerfield, who have long supported LGBTQ equality, are the eyes that they want to just tear out of the body of Christ. To them, we are stumbling blocks. And that makes me feel so hopeless some days. And I just feel like it is this fundamental misreading of what Jesus is all about. These words of Jesus in this passage, they are so passionate. Jesus is really mad about something. He's basically saying there are things that are so not okay that you have to cut them out completely. That if you want to live a life with me, these things have got to go. They have no place in my kingdom, no place in my family. It's Jesus' zero tolerance policy. But what is Jesus' zero tolerance policy about? When I read the Gospels and when I read the Bible in general as a whole, I just don't think that Jesus was zero tolerance about some of the things that our churches have been so obsessed with. I don't see where Jesus is zero tolerance about being LGBTQ. I don't see Jesus being zero tolerance about sexual purity or the rule of law or women being obedient and subservient to men or women's reproductive subjugation or anything else that Jesus' followers seem to have come down so hard on in the modern church. What I do read Jesus being zero tolerance about are things like loving on people who are vulnerable and suffering, serving others instead of lording power over others, and never using human religion to hurt people. That's what I see Jesus being zero tolerance about. A colleague at my previous church, Reverend Kate Carpet, he's the kind of Christian progressive that trolls the conservative Christian websites. So he'll read their stuff and he'll just leave these oppositional comments that are later deleted by the moderators. So one day I was in his office as he was drafting one of these certainly enlightening but temporary comments. And he was responding to a conversation about how Christians who support LGBTQ lives have just no sexual ethics or standards. We just think that anything goes, and we just follow whatever trends are cool in secular society, right? We don't stand on any Christian principles. And Kay was making this masterful argument about how, we do have very strict Christian principles about sexuality. Like Jesus, we stand with those on the margins and those who are most vulnerable. So we strictly oppose things like human trafficking, sexual abuse, the diminishment of people's agency and dignity and power, violating people's consent. Like those are sexual principles that we are very strict about. Of course, that great point, I'm sure, was quickly deleted. But he is right. We do have very strong sexual ethics, and we need to talk about them loudly. We need to apply Christian principles like love your neighbor as yourself, and just as you did it to the least of these, you did it to Christ. We need to apply those Christian principles to every aspect of our lives, including our sexual lives, especially our sexual lives. Expressing our sexuality in relationship is one of the most intimate ways we can be in communion with one another. And expressing our sexuality in violent ways is one of the most intimate and cruel ways we can harm one another. And so, especially in our sexual lives, when we violate the principles that Christ taught us, especially when we hurt vulnerable or less powerful people, that, my friends, is some of the highest form of sin. That is the kind of sin that we as Christians should get passionate about. That's the kind of sin that I believe we should read into passionate, unrelenting words like, if any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones, it would be better for you if a great millstone were tied around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell, where the worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. It's been hard for me this week to watch the world debate whether or not to confirm a very privileged white man to one of the most powerful positions in our nation without fully investigating claims that he's committed sexual assault. And it's been hard to hear that some of the strongest voices against doing a full investigation are coming from people who very loudly proclaim that they are followers of Jesus. And to hear the nominee himself use his own devotion to church as evidence that he would never commit such a crime. Because in complete defiance of the teachings of Jesus, our churches have shown themselves to be some of the most dangerous places for vulnerable people. With our historic sexual repression, our commitment to secrecy, and our unwavering reverence for and protection of our clergy, some of the most heinous sexual crimes have occurred in church spaces at the hands of church leaders. #MeToo has an active corollary in the church. #ChurchToo. It is these very kinds of sin that I believe that Jesus was talking about in this passage, the kind of hurt the vulnerable and protect the powerful kind of sin. These most intimate and most damaging sins are the sins that must be cut out and torn out of our families and our faith communities and our schools. So, should we just cut off Brett Kavanaugh and all the bros he drank with as a young man? Are these bad-behaving boys who grew up to be the men who hold power over us? Are they the bad eye that we must tear out, lest our society descend into hell? And is there any grace or redemption or repair in all of this brokenness? Last week, Caitlin Flanagan wrote a piece for The Atlantic about her own sexual assault in 1978. She was in high school and on a date with a young man who attempted to rape her in his car. Flanagan told nobody of the assault, and instead she fell into this deep personal depression that almost ended with her taking her own life. But a major difference between Flanagan's story and the story of Dr. Blasey Ford was that Flanagan's attacker apologized to her a year later in a veiled message in her yearbook. And several years later, when Flanagan was working retail in this department store, the boy who attacked her actually walked up to her with tears in his eyes and apologized to her profusely. And she was able to forgive this boy. And she has not experienced the long-term trauma effects from her attack that many experienced. Now, no survivor's healing should be dependent on the apology or the non-apology of their attacker. But it did make a difference to Flanagan that her attacker actually admitted his own guilt to her. He acknowledged that none of it was her fault. He, who was the only other person there, acknowledged that it did actually happen and that it was a horrible thing. It was a big deal. And that made a difference to Flanagan's ability to heal. And it certainly made a difference in the life of that young man. In the letter of James, the author writes, "Anyone who has committed sins will be forgiven. Therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed." If we are going to heal as a people, we have got to get these sins confessed. Not just to God, not just to ourselves, but they must be confessed in the open. Only then can we find reconciliation and repair. If I steal $1,000 from Bob Gerard or Ernest, and then I just pretend that it didn't happen, you know, if I just go along as though he's crazy to think that it happened. Or if I make it feel like, you know, I deserve to have that $1,000 and he didn't deserve it. And if Bob really needed that $1,000 and because I stole it from him, his life was harder and my life was easier. If that's the way things go after I do a harmful thing, there is no way that we can be close friends ever again. There's no way that we can be in real community with one another. Until I confess that I took something from him. I confess that it was wrong for me to do that. And until I do something to remedy that situation, like give up something so that he can have something. That is repair. And with repair may one day come reconciliation. But without confession and without repair, we can never really be in community with one another. It is that same way today with people who act out toxic masculinity and white supremacy. And with those of us who are victims of those systems, we can be in the same room with one another. But we will never be in real community. We will never really be able to be in true relationship until the breach between us is repaired, until the sins are confessed, until those who have done harm come crying for forgiveness with real tears and real remorse, until those poisonous secrets, that scrambling for power over it, that ability for some to harm others with impunity, till all of that is cut off and torn out. I have to say, I'm a little scattered this week. I'm not going to be able to tie this message up into a nice bow. I really am not. The pain is too close to my pain. It's too close to the pain of people I love. But what I want to say most is this. For those of you who are survivors of the abuses of patriarchy, you are not alone. It is not your fault. None of this is fair or okay. And you deserve to feel safe and to be well and to live life with joy. But I know that's hard sometimes. And for those in our community who have done harm or benefited from harm, God is full of grace and love for all. No one is an appendage to be cut off. But bad behaviors and harm and aggressive defensiveness simply must go. Those things are not okay. They are not acceptable, and they must be abandoned, cut off, and torn out. And God offers forgiveness and healing when we confess our sins to one another in these painful and messy ways. And if we're going to have any chance of stumbling together toward reconciliation, the road to get there is going to be bumpy and uncomfortable and hard and full of grief and anger and loss. But we can get there. And when we do, we will be just a little bit closer to the kingdom of heaven than we are right now. Thanks be to God.